Well, hi there. I'm Jian Ghomeshi, wishing you and your family a good holiday period on behalf of the whole Roqe team. As we move into 2024, we're giving you a special Roqe series, one that we have remastered and done some editing to. This is a special 4-part series entitled Why Pink Floyd? We bring together some of the biggest names in Persian music culture to examine why the supersized and disproportionate Iranian obsession with the iconic British rock band. Was it the music, the iconography, the concepts, the timing, the lyrics, the vibe? We examine all sides in this series. If you missed it the first time, we hope you'll really enjoy this slightly updated edition. We'll be back with a brand new episode of Roqe on January 4th, and you can access all of our older episodes and programming at roqemedia.com. In the meantime, here now is Why Pink Floyd, Part 4. This is Why Pink Floyd, an Iranian Obsession, Part 4, coming to you on SoundCloud, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Telegram. Also, for all the episodes in one place of this series, you can see them at our website, roqemedia.com. Here's a little bit of what we heard on Part 3 of this series.
It's like a football team that gets used to losing, and it just can't handle winning. And I think that's the case with a lot of old countries like Iran, Egypt, and these older countries that have gone through a lot.
I went to that gig with 3 Iranian friends and 1 English friend. And he was amazed that we knew all the lyrics and he was like, this is a band from my parents' generation. Like, why do you guys care about them? Why?
I remember when The Wall came out, I was of course a teenager, but we lined up, and it was at the beginning of the revolution. So the suppression of music was not there yet. It was getting
interesting. There. So in this final episode of our series, we address storytelling, classics, and conclusions with Logar Ramin Torkian in Los Angeles, Anoush Saboktakin in New York, Sanaz Sotoudeh in Dubai, and Arash Mitooie in Tehran. Here now is Part 4 of Why Pink Floyd, an Iranian Obsession. Well, our first guest on Part 4 of our series is an internationally recognized composer and a highly gifted multi-instrumentalist and a member of the popular band Niyaz. Logar Ramin Torkian was born in 1964 in Tehran, moved to the United States as a teenager after the 1979 Iranian Revolution. He co-founded the successful world music group Axiom of Choice together with singer Mamak Khadem in 1992, and is well known for his best-selling global rock fusion band Niyaz, which he formed with Azam Ali in 2005. Ramin's unique talents have been featured on many major film scores, including Body of Lies, Iron Man, and The Prince of Persia. And right now, Logar Ramin Torkian joins me from Los Angeles today. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jean. It's good to be back on your program.
Good to have you back on, and I can't think of a better person. I mean, we've been exploring this interesting intersection of Iranians and Pink Floyd, and you are, as well, very well placed to give us some perspective. So let me just start by asking you if you remember where or when or how it was that you really first became aware of Pink Floyd while you were in Iran as a kid.
Yes. First of all, I was a huge fan of Pink Floyd. I must have been like around 12 years old. living in Tehran. And the first recording of Pink Floyd that I heard was the album called Animal. And that was the one that I was just so mesmerized, and I would kept listening to it over and over again. And then when I moved to United States, obviously, I purchased all of their records, and I was a huge, huge fan.
So where would you have, I mean, Animals is a pretty, that's post Dark Side of the Moon. It's post Wish You Were Here. It's a pretty sophisticated and dense record for a kid to get into. How did you discover Animals? Did you have an older sibling or something that passed this on to you?
Actually, a neighbor of mine gave it to me to listen to, and that's how I got it. And obviously at the time, I wasn't fluent in English, but still there was something there that that I wanted to made me want to listen to it, and kind of the visuals that was on the cover of this cassette tape, and I remember that very well, and all that, it was just so captivating.
Were you in Iran? You were in Iran until a couple of years after the revolution, as I recall. So you were there when the wall came out?
No, actually, I left December 1979. So I left right at the cusp of the revolution.
And you would have missed the wall then, because I think it came out a couple of months after that. So you experienced the wall once you got to the United States.
That's right. That's right.
Why do you think... I mean, you can speak partly from your personal experience, but partly from what you know about Iranians. You know about the music that has come out of Iran and has been explored and celebrated in the Iranian diaspora. And you know about the access to music issues that occurred after the revolution in Iran. What is your sense of why Iranians have such a connection and affection for Pink Floyd, disproportionately so?
Yeah, first of all, anything I say is a personal opinion. Obviously, I have never done a study on this, but actually I have reflected on this concept because it was a phenomena. And I would go back to say that for any artistic expression to take seed and for a culture to kind of accept it and embrace it in the way that we did about Pink Floyd, first there must be a certain circumstances within that society that makes it receptive. That is very important. And then there must be some sort of a trace of a cultural roots that it makes that expression familiar to us, and therefore we kind of are ready to accept it. What do I mean by that? One of the most important element of the Pink Floyd music is that it has a narrative and it tells a story. Wow. And if you look at that, we have a very long, old tradition in that, from Naqali, Shahnameh Khani, from Ta'ziyeh. These were all musicals. They're like Broadway shows, but in its own way. But what is the content? They're trying to tell us a very dramatic story in a musical context. And I think one of the most important elements of Pink Floyd, and why we kind of were ready to accept it and we did not reject it, is because it was telling a story. And when we talk about popularity, we're talking about a very particular demographic of Iranian. We're not talking about the Iranian that that lived in the rural area. We're talking about the young urban Iranian that were faced with a few very important factors in their life. One was that during the Shah was very rapid assimilation it was encouraged for them to do. That is, in another word, to be westernized. Yep. And that is some sort of invasion. That's some sort of a confinement. It's sometimes conformity that was being asked. So therefore, like the story of money, the materialism, the institution that it is asking you to conform. And interestingly enough, even after the revolution, in my opinion, that institution still existed in a different form, conformity, and the idea of wanting to break away. That's the narrative of their and the message in the Pink Floyd that's resonated so well with the young Iranian that wanted to find its own identity.
Okay, so everything you've said so far is super smart, even brilliant, excellent, and it's a really good case for why The Who should be really big in Iran. Because if you're talking about narrative and storytelling, you've got Tommy, arguably the first rock opera, and with an amazing narrative. If you're talking about a rebellious anti-establishment message, you got Teenage Wasteland, My Generation, and yet I don't remember throughout my lifetime very many Iranians coming up to me and going, man, that Who Are You album, that really inspired me. It's Floyd has had this place of prominence that didn't exist for bands like The Who or Rolling Stones, which of course outside of Iran are always up at the top of the list. Even if Pink Floyd's there, you'd say the Beatles, Stones, The Who, etc. So how do you explain that disconnect?
Yeah. Actually, first of all, who's who? No, I'm just joking.
How dare you? How dare you as a
actually,
guitarist? Pete Townsend, you should be worshiping Pete Townsend.
Because I was not a fan of Who. It's interesting, no? Yeah. Because there is another aspect of Iranian culture that we have to explore, and that is our infatuation with sensorium. And that is to alter our senses is again another thing that it is very deeply rooted in our culture. Whether it was through food, herbiology, mysticism, drugs. Let's talk about it. Alcohol, opium. There is a huge emphasis on sensorium. We have a very simple word for it in Farsi, to get to a point of hal. And actually, this is something that it's very untangible and yet very real. That is that's the interesting part of hal. And hal, one thing that it does, it expands the silence and the space within something that it is very confined. It makes the silence or the space between melodies just as important as the melody itself. It transforms the space that you are in it, both as a listener and as a participant, as a musician. And that is something that it existed in their music.
Is hal always related to drugs?
No, it's also related to food.
Oh. Right, but because the drug part, let me take it one at a time. The drug part, sure. I'm glad you mentioned that because very few people have, but Arash Mitooie made the case that he thinks Pink Floyd, part of why Pink Floyd became such a mainstay after the revolution was because it was passed along by brothers and sisters and older folks to those who didn't have as much access to music anymore. And why were people disproportionately interested in Pink Floyd before the revolution? Because of Tehran and high society drug culture, exactly what you're just saying, that and certainly growing up in the West, I've said this a few times on this special, but as a kid in the 80s in Canada, for example, I always associated Pink Floyd with stoners. It was like a drug band, kind of not to take anything away from how amazing they are musically. In fact, that's part of the reason they're so amazing musically is they can elevate you to the next level. So if we accept that drug paradigm, why else does psychedelic music like that end up connecting with Iranians more so than again something like a great rock band like U2?
Actually, well, U2 belongs to a different generation, but we can compare it to Genesis and Peter Gabriel, which it more or less is a little bit closer in terms of timeline. And those bands, yes, actually those bands also had a certain level of popularity, but I think it was a conjunction of almost like a perfect storm. You have a youth culture that is telling a story that you relate to it. I related to it as an Iranian in a very kind of a suffocating environment, and I was forced to, and unconsciously I was forced to assimilate, and there was so much contradiction. My parents were very different than me, but they wanted me to be very different than them. It's actually very ironic, but in Iranian, they wanted their kids to be different than them, and that with the regime, both pre and post revolution that had these structures in place. Then also at the same time you have a musical form that allows for the hall to be there. Now, if it's inducive through drugs for that generation, it was not unique to their generation. You look at the many musicians in the traditional music of Iran, it's that culture is very related to opium, and the way that the opium made the musician express themselves in such form, and for the listeners to hear it differently because they were also consuming the same drug. Same thing with Pink Floyd. It is a psychedelic expression with a very potent message and narrative.
Let me ask you something about the musical nature of Pink Floyd. What Iranians were used to coming out of either classical Iranian music or even just popular modern Iranian music was not so much the 3.5-minute pop song, the sort of early Beatles style song, but longer pieces of music that could sometimes be languorous or wandering or musically, even instrumentally improvisational, and that Pink Floyd, because it sort of peddled in that kind of in those kind of songs, that kind of music, that kind of stretched out elastic kind of music, resonated. Does that make sense to you musically?
Absolutely, I agree. Actually, I think another element, if I add to that, is that Pink Floyd is always mid-tempo. Who was just too intense and too energetic at many moments in their albums. If you listen, the intensity builds up in Pink Floyd, but the tempo is always mid-tempo. And the idea of spiral music is something that it is, again, has a very deeply rooted in our culture. You listen to our traditional music, there is no verse, chorus, and then you listen to our folk music, it's just chorus. There is really no verse, So this idea of verse, chorus is very Western. And it's, from our perspective, this idea of an ebb and flow and, starting at a point and going in a spiral, you come back to the same point, but from a different perspective. Is not the same point.
Although by the time we get to contemporary Iranian pop music, whether it's coming out of LA or not, it is very much verse, chorus.
Well, because that's assimilated music. Niyaz is assimilated music from that perspective. We write a lot of times, most of the times we write verse, chorus, and that is assimilated music.
This has been such an incredible learning curve doing this the special. It is such an incredible learning curve in the sense that we start off by talking about Pink Floyd, but then we're learning so much. I'm learning so much about Iranians, my background, both culturally and musically. One of the things that was such a revelation that solved that opened the doors up to why there's this connection with Pink Floyd very much so was Reza Moqaddas, who we had on part 2 of this series, said. Because I was putting the question to him, kind of pushing back on him. Well, why not Zeppelin? Well, why not Jimi Hendrix? Why not why? And he said, the distorted guitar sound is not something that Iranians have been socialized to really appreciate or like very much. So the fact that Pink Floyd was making this rock music, but that it didn't have that crunchy punk rock, because especially later when we start getting into the wall resonating because it's got this anti-establishment message, my question will be, well, why not the Clash then? Why not the Sex Pistols? But if you're not attracted to that sound, then you don't want that, but you get it in Pink Floyd, but you get a softer sound in the meantime. Can you speak to that?
I totally would agree with Reza. I think there is an element of there is a very lyrical element into Pink Floyd's music. You listen to the synthesizer parts that should be very outdated today with our standards. And actually I was listening to it with my son the other day, and it still made sense. It still sounded very lyrical and beautiful,
It's true.
just as
Yeah.
as a sonic spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not talking about anything else. Just as a sonic spectrum, it was delicious. And I
What were you
think that
listening
was
to? Which album or what song?
Welcome to the Machine.
Right.
I was just listening to that long, intro of the synths and kind of the warmth and the soothing aspect of it. And I said, boy, like these are the sound. This sound still is relevant
Yeah.
in today's digital electronic world.
Yeah.
And how amazing that they were able to capture that, because it's very lyrical. It's so lyrical. And again, it's very mid-tempo, and most of the time it's actually slow-tempo
Yes.
music,
Yes.
and that is something that we feel comfortable and it's familiar to us,
It's so interesting that we always throw the word timeless around when we talk about legendary artists. But if you listen, I don't know when the last time you listened to Dark Side of the Moon is, but it is amazing the way it stands up. I mean, if you were to play other music that was coming out at that time, the Bay City Rollers or Cliff Richard or something, it sounds of a time. It's the early 70s. Dark Side of the Moon, it really doesn't have an era to it. I mean, it's kind of, it's the best-selling album ever, or one of the most regularly selling albums ever. So that makes sense. But that's part of the magic that you're talking about, I guess.
Yeah, and look at who actually was one of the producer of that album, which is Brian Eno, and he's a legendary ambient musician. Or producer. His music is about nothing but space. And kind of expanding that spectrum. And one of the things that it is very common in ambient music is to be very modal and kind of drony. And for
which
us,
sounds Eastern.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which to us is very, again, see, I always go back to this, that, a culture must have to have a certain level of vocabulary or understanding within itself, so it becomes receptive. That's why we rejected the distorted sound or very high intensity drum rolls that were kind of very, like doubling the guitar riff, because to us, we don't have a point of reference. This didn't exist before, so it's a new language, and therefore it would take time for it to have a place. Especially, it's assimilating in a very different way. In a different context, it's assimilating.
Let me ask you a final question. It is, what a treasure trove of thoughts you are. I love talking
Thank
to you.
Same here.
And let me ask a final question, and this is another musical question. Because you said you were a huge Pink Floyd fan from when you were a kid. You're a significant multi-instrumentalist. You're a great player. Were you influenced by Gilmour? Were you influenced by Roger Waters, for that matter?
No, actually, my early childhood training was on violin. And so I was learning traditional Iranian violin techniques when I was in Iran. It was only after I moved to
While loving
Eugene.
Pink Floyd?
Yeah, while I loved Pink
While you were
Floyd.
listening to Dogs on repeat.
That's right. And the irony of it is that actually I kind of became more kind of infatuated by kind of guitar at that earlier age was when I moved to Eugene, Oregon, and I was not let to sit in the orchestra because I was playing quarter tones. And the instructor said, like, my God, you're out of tune all the time. And I had to justify that's my culture, that that it's not out of tune. It's actually a note that is very legitimate. Because I went to audition and I played, jokingly aside, actually I went to audition and I decided to just play one of the pish daramads that I knew how to play well. And I thought, okay, this is going to really impress him. And it's in a pish daramad in Dashti, which, it has 2 quarter tones in it. And he kept saying, oh my God, you're so out of tune. And I took it personally, and Actually, I stopped playing violin. And I bought a very, very cheap guitar in a garage sale. But from day one, I was always trying to play some sort of an Eastern melody on that guitar. Oh. It's just that, that desire never went away. But, I felt like I have to assimilate because I was being rejected musically from what I knew.
Parenthetically, though, back to the Pink Floyd fan, and before I let you go, are you someone who continues with Floyd after what Roger? Do you like Division Bell? I mean, or does Pink Floyd have to include both David Gilmour and Roger Waters for you, if not Syd Barrett for that matter?
I kind of like, to be very honest, like for me, Pink Floyd was a kind of a snapshot in time, and I do not listen to I mean, I've heard them here and there, and oh my God, this is really such a nice sound, but it inevitably reflects a certain style that I think it originated from Pink Floyd, so it always makes me think of Pink Floyd, and therefore I always go back to listen to original recordings. And even today, when I'm sharing with my son, who's now only 13 years old, but he loves Pink Floyd, are the earlier recordings.
Why does he love Pink Floyd?
I think he relates to the storytelling aspect of it. Interestingly enough, he really he really loves the story. Wish You Were Here. He actually understands the message, the anti-war message that it's in there, and it was very socially. They said a lot of nice stuff.
Yeah. Somehow simple and profound at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And also it was very dramatic, it's almost like a drama. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I was going to let you go, but I actually thought of something that you referenced when you talked about this not being music for the rural set. There was something that really hit home for me as well from Amir Bahari. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a music critic in Tehran and a journalist. And one thing that he was saying is, the people who got into Pink Floyd, like there's a class element here, and the class element is the inverse of the West. I mean, as someone who grew up basically in the West like yourself, even though you were in Iran for your early years, you'll understand this. The whole romance of rock and roll, from the West is working class kids. You don't need money to play rock and roll. You have to find a guitar and you bash out some tunes and you start making money. You go on tour. Anybody can do it, and anybody can make it to the top if they're the right combination, and if they're good players, like Guns N' Roses, or and this is the whole mythology around hip hop too. And yet, when we talk about Iran, and particularly post-revolution Iran, that just being able to access an electric guitar and amplifiers, let alone to access the music to learn from and love and all of that, there's a class dimension to that. Not everybody could afford this. So in fact, the people who were playing rock music in Iran were quite well off, and Pink Floyd becomes associated with a sophisticated kind of wealthy thing to be listening to, as opposed to a rock and roll underclass. Isn't that interesting?
That's so interesting, because actually that's a very interesting analysis, because power projects and influences truth, and here we're talking about a power struggle in two different societies. One is that is trying to fight against the establishment and what is considered as to be powerful, the classical music of Western world, and it projected a certain level of sophistication. And now you look back in Iran, the power of being able to kind of even consume and even assimilate, it kind of creates the perception of that, oh my God, this is the real music, this is true, this is the true form of art. Both are dealing with power struggles.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, John, for this opportunity. It's a very good question that you have asked, and already with what you had said from how you have quoted from other participants, it makes me very eager to hear the whole conversation as soon as I can, or you put it out.
Thank you. I hope your son enjoys it too. You take care of yourself, brother.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome, my son. Welcome to the machine. Where have you been? It's alright, we know where you've been. You've been in the pipeline, filling your time. Provided with toys and scouting for boys. You bought a guitar to punish your mom. You didn't like school, and you know nobody's fool.
You are listening to part 4 of a Roqe special series, Why Pink Floyd? An Iranian Obsession, coming to you on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, Telegram, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, for all the episodes in one place, just go to our website, roqemedia.com, where you can get more information about our show and check out other episodes as well. Our next guest was born and raised in Tehran, where he started playing guitar at the age of 15. During his late teens and early 20s, Anoush Saboktakin became one of the first guitar players in Iran to perform and teach complex musical techniques of the modern electric guitar. He also became one of the pioneers of underground rock and metal music in Iran before he moved to LA, where he joined numerous projects and continued his music education, earning a degree in music composition. In 2015, Anush moved to New York City, where he is active as a guitar player, a composer, and a producer. He's also the man behind the engaging group Muslim and a Mexican, who sometimes perform repertoire from the 60s and 70s Persian pop rock to classic rock and blues classics. And right now, Anoush Saboktakin joins me from New York City today. Hello, sir.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure to talk to you. And you're a great guitarist. You're a songwriter. How aware of Pink Floyd were you when you were growing up in Iran?
Well, my introduction to Pink Floyd was really early, like at the age of 5. I remember that my uncle had a tape that had this baby crying in there, and I knew that from the tape of the baby, and then later I found out that was the wall. And so basically that tape was what I knew of Pink Floyd, and I loved that. And since the age of 5, I kind of I don't know what was about that music that really grabbed my attention, but it stayed with me, and to this day it didn't let me go.
You're a fan, and I'm assuming you're a fan of Gilmour as a guitarist as well.
Absolutely, yes.
So the hypothesis of this special is that, Pink Floyd has had this disproportionate connection for and with Iranians, both inside Iran and in the Iranian diaspora. And a lot of people have commented that we've had on the show so far, giving us different reasons for that. Why do you think Iranians have gravitated towards Pink Floyd so much?
Well, I believe it's a mix of things. Is that the time that, especially the music was opening in Iran, and the music was coming in, and Pink Floyd was just at the height of their career, and albums that they made during mid to late 70s, and especially The Wall, where I was introduced to that music. It really was at the right time, and I believe the right place now. For some people, their introduction was with the political aspect, and they also gave him like that rebellious side of music that was kind of like familiar to Iranian culture, that wanted to get out of the shell that they had, which you didn't really feel and connect with, like let's say the Beatles or Led Zeppelins, and it was not as stranger to Iranian culture. And in the end, the music, because for me, Pink Floyd, like the instrumentation and the attention to the musical side of it, and making these grand intros for their songs and developing it really connects with I think with the way that even our Persian traditional music is, like basically the songs are really long and it develops into different movements, and Pink Floyd did it perfectly. Like, having songs that are 20 minutes, you don't really see that much from other bands that came at that time.
Oh, that's really interesting. I want to take the 2 points that you just made one at a time. In fact, I'll start with the second one you were just making about you called them grand musical intros, and the long compositions. That's very interesting, because you're right. Pink Floyd, I mean, notwithstanding a couple of, Another Brick in the Wall, which is a single or something like that, it is not known for 3.5 minute pop ditties where you get to the chorus in the first minute and you make it radio friendly, and nor is really progressive rock in general. This point has been made, but you're the first person to really emphasize that there may be something in that traditional Persian music, or what people are used to listening, doesn't just come in 3.5 minute packages. Is that what you're suggesting?
The way that I see, like the people that I saw and during my life that they liked Pink Floyd, for example, like my grandfather loved Shine On You Crazy Diamond intro all the way, and he didn't speak a word of English. He didn't know what Pink Floyd was, but he loved that song so much that we later, after he passed, we were calling the grandfather song, because he just loved it. And the thing is, he connected to the music and the melodies and the playing and that whole development. I can't really pinpoint that the Persian culture maybe is related, but I think Iranians like good melodies and like it to see and hear it developed, not just as you said, a 3 minute. Yes, the pop genre in Iran, maybe the pop rock genre, was looking for songs, but even most of the pop songs that you see are not really the way that it was the popular standard.
They're not She Loves You. They're not. Yeah.
Exactly. Iranians like a little bit of sadness most of the time, and they like deeper things that kind of connect to them. And I think Pink Floyd kind of touched up on all of that stuff, plus the music and plus the timing of where all this thing was introduced to Iranians.
You talked about the timing of The Wall, which obviously was important for you. How important was the fact that The Wall, an album about government suppression, Big Brother, authoritarianism, came out the same year as the Iranian Revolution?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I was 5 years old and I wasn't really aware of any of that. So my introduction wasn't really anything through that. But later on, I've noticed that, okay, well, that whole song, We Don't Need No Education, basically, it really touched up on any different movement that was anywhere else. So I'm not sure, if it was important to Iranian Revolution and at the time or anything like that, but a lot of people kind of felt that, okay, this is the rage that I had, and somebody is speaking to it, so they connected, people who connected with the lyrics. Same thing happened later on with in the 80s with the metal scene, when Metallica and other bands came, and then was that anger that the young kids gravitated towards. I think that had some elements of it, but I really am not sure how important it was.
And Anush, can you, for those of us who grew up in the diaspora, I was born in London, grew up in Canada, or for non-Iranians for that matter, can you explain a little bit the culture of access to popular culture and music in Iran in the 80s and 90s. You're not the first person to talk about. I mean, Arash Sobhani, Ramin Sadeghi, Roqe Arab, they've all talked about how people learned about music from their older brothers or sisters, and so a lot of the classic Floyd stuff from the 70s was getting passed along to younger generations in the 80s and 90s. But talk to me about just how difficult it was. I mean, growing up again in the West, I could access whatever music I wanted, not on the internet, of course, didn't exist, but go to a record store and get whatever you want. You buy the record, you buy the album. Through the 90s, you buy the CDs, you know. Talk to me about how you would access music in Iran and where you think Pink Floyd fits into all that.
Yeah. So, you know, in countries like England and United States and Canada, there is music industry. And when there is an industry, then there is a business that is designed to make the industry work. And that didn't exist in Iran. So you didn't have radios that play the songs of the day. You didn't have record stores. We didn't have any of that. So basically, what was passed along was what we were exposed to. And there was a place, Stereotal, I don't know if you know the name, you probably have heard of it, that was copying music, and basically that was one source that people were getting it, but it was always coming from like the older brother or the uncle or somebody who was cool in the family and listening to like cool music. And then you were like, okay, what do you have? And you were going in the room and taking a look at their cassettes and things like, oh, this is cool and that is cool. And then you were hearing it. And then when you were going in school and you had, you know, people that at your school that they knew and they were introducing you to new music. So it was just very organic. And it's really interesting that a few bands, not just Pink Floyd, like became very like popular, at least like, you know, between rock musicians, like the band Camel, the British band, was very big in Iran. And like when I came here, I was very surprised that nobody knows.
Dude, I swear to you, I feel like an idiot, but I've never, Ramin Sadeghi, we started talking about Camel, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. You know, like, and he's like, what are you talking about? This is a huge band, right?
Yeah, in Iran, it was like super popular. It was just basically, like, I'm not saying it was as popular as Pink Floyd, but definitely was like, you know, as big as Led Zeppelin or anything else in there. And then when I came here, nobody was like, who's Camel? So that tells you like how music industry has shaped this side of the planet, and that side was just basically organic. Whatever was getting out.
But it's organic. But I still don't. It's still hard for me to get my head around sometimes how random it seems what pops and what doesn't. Like, for example, I've heard that, and you could obviously speak to this as a guy who's steeped in metal, that Metallica were big in Iran, right? Or are big in Iran, and you'll look at a band like Floyd, obviously, which we're talking about. On the flip side, I mean, U2, you know, an internationally probably the biggest band of the last 4 decades. Not so big in Iran. Doesn't make a ripple in Iran. The Rolling Stones, you know. So it's strange to me what pops and what doesn't. What seems to have seeped into the Persian pop culture DNA and what hasn't. And is that just random, or is there something in the music?
Yeah, I think it is in the music. It's not purely random. Some of it is random, you know, I don't know to what percent or what degree, but it is in the music. Like, to me, like U2 was always like too pop, and I couldn't really grasp anything that like really touched the chord, you know, in me. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. But Pink Floyd, or like, you know, a band like Metallica, they hit it, like they touched something with people that it was in the music. There was either some sort of emotion that they were really bringing out in their music, which Iranians could connect to. Like, Iranians could not, you living in Iran, you couldn't connect to Rolling Stones.
Why
song.
not though? I mean, the Stones were the original rebels as well. I mean, why would?
Yeah, but their rebellion, I believe, was of a different kind and a different texture. It just was like a rock and roll way of life, and just, you know, singing songs about jumping jack flash and things like that. You just like, what does that mean in my life living in Tehran? It just, I don't get it. But when you listen to We Don't Need No Education, We Don't Need No Thought Control, that's one thing. You're like completely like people who listen to that kind of music and people who understand English, they would definitely get it. And then people who like also music like me that purely got into the musical side of it, there was like this ocean of musical vocabulary of guitar playing and solos and intros and outros, and it's just compositions that it was complete. And they backed it up with like, movies, like, they did the Wall movie and then like the Pompeii back in the day and all of that stuff. So it was just more of a complete picture for us to have something as of substance.
Listen, I won't get too into the weeds here because we'll lose the audience, but I have to just momentarily defend you too, because yes, I'm a fan, but and I think that of course they gravitated towards a more pop kind of sound, or at least they were seen that way because they became just so huge, or they still are so huge. But I could make a case. I mean, if we wanted to, and if we took the time, I could say, that early 80s album War with songs like Sunday Bloody Sunday, I mean, I could make a case why Iranians would be able to embrace those lyrics and the militant strums of the Edge on guitar and really embrace that as some sort of representation of the revolutionary spirit they felt, or the desire to overcome a suppressive regime or whatever. It still seems so interesting to me what has popped and what hasn't.
Yeah, I think that you have a case there, but that's more of a intentional effort, try to like get into it and try to bring all of that stuff out of it. As with Pink Floyd, I think they kind of like hit that medium right at the spot that really is popular enough for a lot of people like my grandfather to like their music, and then it's deep enough for a musician to enjoy it, and it's got some anti-government and revolution and anger, and also talking about like different aspects of life, like Dark Side of the Moon, like things about like time and money and things that everybody can relate to.
I was going to say, when you've made the case that you really discovered Pink Floyd through The Wall, and that was an album you would end up really embracing. Did you then go back while you were in Iran into the back catalog and Wish You Were Here and Dark Side of the Moon and the 70s works, or if not the late 60s works with Syd Barrett?
Yes. I started after that trying to find more about the bands that what's out there, and then I remember I got Wish You Were Here, and I loved just the whole album, and then Dark Side of the Moon, and then Animals, and all of that stuff that I listened to. I'm like, okay, this is just great. I love it. And then I tried to go back, and I went all the way back to the beginning, and to me, it didn't sound like the band that I knew. I'm like, what is this? Like the Syd Barrett era to me was completely alien.
Yeah. Dude, you're not doing enough drugs. You really gotta hit the LSD hard to really understand that.
I was born a little too late.
Yeah. A final question. It's great to talk to you. And this isn't an easy one to answer, but what do you think that the impact of Pink Floyd has been on Iranian musicians?
Well, I think it has been massive. It's like it really kind of opened the door of looking at music not just as a song and more of a concept. Like they could perfectly execute like an album with a whole concept going through the album. So a lot of musicians like looked at it that way, and then for me as a guitar player, it really like Gilmour's guitar playing and the way that he develops melodies and sound and all of that stuff, it really to this day I'm learning and it's never ending. So for me the impact was massive.
Anush, it's great to talk to you. I appreciate the insights. I appreciate the time you've given us. And
Thank
I
you
look
so
forward
much.
to seeing you. Thanks, my brother.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Encumbered forever by desire and ambition. There's a hunger still unsatisfied. Our weary eyes still stray to the horizon. Though down this road we've been so many times. The grass was greener, the light was brighter, the taste was sweeter, the nights of wonder, with friends surrounded, the dawn mist glowing, the water flowing, the endless river, forever and ever.
You are listening to part 4 of a Roqe Original Series, Why Pink Floyd? An Iranian Obsession. This part dealing with storytelling, classics, and conclusions. Coming to you on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, Instagram, YouTube, and Telegram. Also for all episodes in one place, and all the information about Roqe you need, roqemedia.com is our site. Our next guest grew up a child prodigy, especially in the realm of music. Sanaz Sotoudeh started playing piano in Tehran at a very young age and continued her music education with a master's from McGill University and a postgraduate study at the Royal Academy of Music in London on a full scholarship. She has lived in Montreal, London, and Dubai and Vancouver and has toured all over the world. These days, Sanaz is writing and recording music that fuses Eastern Persian sounds with classical Western traditions. And she recently posted on social media about just how much the Pink Floyd album The Wall means to her. Right now, Sanaz Sotoudeh joins us from Dubai. Hello.
Hi, Jian. How are you?
I'm good. How are you in Dubai?
I'm good. I'm actually very good. Enjoying the weather. Things are kind of in like normal here, so it's surprising me, and it's fun. Yeah, it's fun to be here.
Well, lucky you. Let's talk Pink Floyd. You are a classical musician, of course, but were you aware of Pink Floyd when you were growing up in Iran?
Yes, I was. Well, I studied Western classical piano at the conservatory in Tehran, and during the time that I was growing up, rock music was very popular, obviously, as part of this musical pop styles. And Pink Floyd was one of very famous, popular rock bands, and so being in the musical scene, I got to listen to their music, and I became familiar to it during that time. And I really, that's how I get into their music.
So when you got to start knowing Pink Floyd's music, and obviously I know you're a fan now, what is appealing to you coming from a classical musician's perspective and mindset? What's appealing about Pink Floyd?
You know, I really love their music. It's I usually don't listen to many rock bands because I don't relate myself to their style much. But Pink Floyd is definitely one of my favorite musical bands because their music has very strong beats, and especially that they have philosophical lyrics. Also, is there something about their music style that is very transparent and effortless compared to other rock bands that I've been listening to, and I like the philosophy behind their lyrics. Especially I love their rock opera album, The Wall, and because of the strong message of freedom behind it. In general, freedom in society, in educational system, freedom from government that treats the citizens like chess pieces, to my opinion. So I can totally relate like how I see the society to what they're trying to carry behind their album and their songs, like the content. And I haven't seen other bands try to carry this message so effectively. And
something that we've talked about on this special is that the music, not just the lyrics, but the music itself can feel quite melancholy, quite sad, which is not out of step with a lot of Iranian music. Is that something that appeals to you?
I relate their music to one of my favorite classical composers, Franz Liszt. Not only their music, it's not like specifically about their music, but how this pianist, Franz Liszt was a very famous virtuosic kind of rock star type pianist of 19th century, and he also was fed up with the aristocratic society of his time and was drawn into freedom and free living style of gypsy music. So he created this music, piano music compositions of very virtuosic music compositions that they were depicting this Hungarian free lifestyle and spirit. So, and he was one of my favorite composers and pianists of all time, and still is. And I played many of his music. And I really relate Franz Liszt with Pink Floyd, because they want to carry the same message through their music, and also both they have their music is very beautiful as well as complex, and you can actually listen and enjoy, but then they have this philosophical and strong message for their society of their time and behind it as well. And that's how I get interested into also Pink Floyd music, because I see that in their what they try to do.
Your sense of things is that this music was passed along, and particularly after the revolution, in the years, in the decades after the revolution, this was the stuff that really stuck with people because of the message behind it.
Exactly. And I really think still rock music has a strong impact in Iran still, because they try to break through, like through the rules and all these imposed ideas of their society. And that's exactly how it is in Iran, like between young people. And yeah.
Can I ask you a final question about the sound? Reza Moghaddas was on, and he was saying, as opposed to other rock bands, one of the reasons why Pink Floyd would actually has such a following and continues to amongst Iranians is that Iranians are not as attuned to listening to distorted guitars. And even though Pink Floyd's a rock band, they don't use a lot of that sort of distorted rock sound, and that makes it more palatable for the Iranian ears. Does that make sense to you?
I'm not sure about specifically Iranian ears, but even to my ears as a classical pianist, that I'm used to listen to Western music and other like I'm not like completely Iranian listening to Iranian music. Right. Their music is very refined, and it's pleasant to listen to, and it's similar. That's how I related to the classical music, because in that way it affects you more deeply in the soul, rather than makes you agitated or trying to with effort enforce something to you. So that's what I loved about music. Even their album, The Wall, which is a very strong in terms of lyrics and music, but it's still you can hear very simple. It has this simplicity and effortless in their music, which makes me or probably other people makes it easy for them to listen to it.
Sanaz, it's always nice to talk to you. Thank you for doing this all the way from Dubai.
Thank you.
And I hope to talk to you and see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Jian. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mother, do you think they'll drop the bomb? Mother, do you think they'll like this song? Mother, do you think they'll try to break my balls?
You are listening to part 4 of a Roqe Original Series, Why Pink Floyd? An Iranian Obsession. This part dealing with storytelling, classics, and conclusions, and coming to you on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Also, for all the episodes in one place, you can see them at our website, roqemedia.com. Well, our final guest on this series is an Iranian rock and blues musician who has had the distinction of actually being named by a few of our guests during this series as one of the pioneers of bringing Pink Floyd to post-revolutionary Iranian musical circles, even though he himself was only born 3 years before Dark Side of the Moon came out. Arash Mitooie was brought up in an art-loving musical family in Iran. He began taking piano lessons at the age of 7 and became familiar with the basics of Western classical music. But given that his mother was celebrated Iranian vocalist Sima Bina, Arash was also introduced to and grew to love Iranian music and culture. But the lure of Western popular genres was what really captured Arash's heart. By his teens, he was playing rock and blues music on the guitar and forming underground bands with friends, and by his 20s had recorded a couple of albums and started doing private underground concerts. It was during this time in the early 1990s that Arash Mitooie was known to cover a fair amount of Pink Floyd music too in the popular underground music community. Arash has become somewhat legendary for his role in that scene. At present, Arash has been focusing more on the blues and a new collection of music arrangements on Hafez poetry to be released soon. He's also performing concerts of his recent works whilst performing on new projects, including compositions based on the works of the great poet Khayyam. But right now, Arash Mitooie joins us from Tehran. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. Nice to talk to you.
A great pleasure to talk to you. You know, I have to say, as I did in your introduction there, you've been mentioned by, I think, 4 guests so far on this special as one of the main people who was responsible for the spread of Pink Floyd in Iran. Are you aware that you have this status?
Yes, that's one of the wonders about me, I know, because I'm really not very active in performing and recording, but nevertheless, many know me, especially when it comes to specialized subjects like this Pink Floyd or whatever in this rock and roll music. That's because at the time when we were teenagers or young fellows were just playing the music underground, as it was abandoned. So it was just underground, and we were just a few who loved this Western music, and we just played and practiced and joined bands and played home performances underground. I mean, the news spread very much and very quickly by the word of mouth. So many knew us.
Yes.
At that time when
you became legendary, as I said. Take me back first, because I want to ask you about these underground concerts. But first, take me back. I mean, you're only born in 1970, as I say, so it's not like you were one of the guys listening to Dark Side of the Moon or Wish You Were Here when it first came out. How and when did you first discover Pink Floyd?
Let me just quickly say it's a very pleasing compliment to hear that I was only born in 1970. But
I hear you, brother. I hear you. Yeah.
Subject of your question, yes, I was, I think, 18 or 19 when I didn't really, I really listened mostly to old-fashioned rock and roll music and wasn't into Pink Floyd at all. A few of my friends listened to Pink Floyd, however, and they introduced me to Pink Floyd. And interestingly, it was very heavy for me, the music, and it was really difficult for me to even listen to one of their songs all the way to the end because it felt so dark and heavy for me. So it took me time to really get into Pink Floyd.
Do you remember what the first album was that you heard, or the first, was it The Wall?
Yes, I think my friend gave the Wish You Were Here tape to me.
Okay.
And well, that very slow and spacey start really set me off at first. But gradually I started to get more and more attracted to the music, and until a time came when we played Pink Floyd with my band day and night, and we also gave a couple of concerts underground.
So for people who didn't grow up in Iran, like me, I mean, I have friends like Shaya and others who tell me about these underground concerts, but I really don't know how they happened. I mean, I know that the music was banned, and it sounds almost scary, like to be, outing yourself as a rock musician or something. How would you organize these things, or who would organize these things? Because, of course, they became very famous, and there was this pipeline of, I'm told, people who would come and see a concert and come and go, and the word would spread. How did these first start?
So yeah, it just came naturally. We didn't think of any idea to come up with. I mean, we just loved this music, and some people, like me, for example, had their home open to any friends or friends of friends and other people who knew us or me would come to our home in the weekend to just listen to us jam. It was an atmosphere of such.
What songs would you play? I mean, what was your favorite Floyd stuff to cover?
I think we started with the Wish You Were Here, with the Crazy Diamonds, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, because of the guitar solos and then the song in general. And
I'm assuming you were the David Gilmour of the band as the guitarist?
Yeah, exactly. Later on, of course, think that Roger Waters is really much more pivotal in defining the character of the Pink Floyd.
Sure, yeah, I could see that. So, okay, so let me get into this question, which is basically the theme of this special, because you would have an interesting perspective of it. I mean, let me just ask you the question boldly first. What is your theory about why Iranians love Pink Floyd so much?
Yes, I did think about this. See, Iranians are very intellectually profound people, you could say, I think. They have a very rich cultural heritage on one hand, and on the other hand, they have been through, I mean, generation after generation, their lives have been affected and demolished by various political, social events like coups, revolutions, etc., etc. And all of these things, I think, have made Iranian people people who tend to have a philosophical approach towards issues, you could say, I think. And the young generation, and especially the artistic and musician and cultural class, tend to seek values beyond the fashion of the day when they encounter the Western culture. I think this is important. Like a band like Pink Floyd, who have the standard exciting attractions of a rock band, and also more mouth-filling ideas behind their music, I think have become naturally a great attraction for Iranian.
I mean, it's a really strong argument. The conceptual, the philosophical, that is so much of what the lyrical, so much of what Pink Floyd is about. That if you're attracted to those qualities, then you're naturally going to be attracted to this band. But what about the musical? I mean, you're a musician, even you yourself. Why Gilmour? Why not Clapton or Beck or Peter Frampton or Eddie Van Halen? What was it in the Pink Floyd music that you so gravitated towards?
I think if you're talking only about the guitarist, I can see from what I see, Clapton is very famous and loved in Iran as well. But yes, Pink Floyd's music, I think, as a whole package, it has great attractions because it is a rock. It has all the excitements and also they are much more deep in the concepts or subjects they are putting forward. Deeper social, philosophical, or even political ideas. And I think Iranians relate very much to these characteristics.
It's such a great pleasure to get to speak to you. I want to ask you what your favorite album is, and then maybe your favorite Pink Floyd song. I have a suspicion of what your album is because you've already said that you think you've learned about the importance of Roger Waters. So I'm guessing that eliminates a momentary lapse of reason and Division Bell. You're eliminating the later Floyd albums, and you haven't really mentioned The Wall at all. So
if you can't call that a Pink Floyd at all.
Oh, come on, really? You don't accept that as Pink Floyd?
Yeah, really. I just find more Pink Floyd in Roger Waters' later
solo stuff. Yeah, well, you're not the first person to make that argument. So I'm guessing your favorite album is Wish You Were Here. Am I right?
No, I would say Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, you trumped me. And would your favorite song be on Dark Side of the Moon then? I got stuck here a bit. Let's say. I know it's not easy to pick one.
It's very difficult to in one song. Yeah, Us and Them and The Lunatic. Is that the last song of the Dark Side of the Moon?
No, the not the Lunatic.
Brain Damage.
Brain Damage. Yeah. It's sort of the Lunatic. Arash Mitooie, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your perspective, and it's been so good having you part of this series.
Well, thank you, Jian. Nice to speak to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you go. This is full time for this Roqe Original Series. Hey Shaya.
Hi.
خسته نباشی.
شما خسته نباشی.
Wow.
It was for me. It was like like a course in university.
Yeah.
It's like
what an education.
Yes.
Huh? Yeah. What a collection of people. It's been an adventurous and, as you say, educational 6 hours or so of content.
Thank you, really. I thank you to bring up this question That's why Pink Floyd.
I'm really grateful for all the guests who joined us on this little journey and shared their insights. I mean, in the end, this exploration has proven to be much more than about a beloved old rock band or fandom or even music. This is about understanding the cultural path and the preferences of people who've been through a lot in the last half century. Some of it self-inflicted, some of it inflicted upon us, upon them. And it turns out the special relationship of Iranians and Pink Floyd is about big concepts and characteristics of a people: perseverance, communication, collaboration, industriousness, defiance, and resilience.
Yes, it went to our DNA.
Yeah. So we invite you guys out there, your thoughts on what you've heard and the premise and thesis of this series. Please let us know on any of our platforms, or email us at info@roqemedia.com, or just tell us how much you like Floyd. You can do that as well, and why. Or give us feedback on what any of the particular guests had to say. Our website, roqemedia.com, is where you can find the hub of all things Roqe. We would love you to become a patron as well, and you can find out info about supporting in whatever way you can this program on our support page on our site. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together day in and day out. Producer Susan, Ponta the artist, Thoughtful Nagin, the fabulous Keon, Savvy Roham, Aghay Merdad, Master Muhammad, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shaya, who've both put so much work into this. Everybody has, and this is a labor of love for everybody. It's mostly volunteer work, and it's a great team. Thank you to you guys. Thank you to all of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. And thanks to Pink Floyd for all the inspiration. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Mizun Bashin.
Is there anyone home? Come on now. I hear you're feeling down. Well, I can ease your pain, get you on your feet again. Relax. I need some information first. Just the basic facts. Can you show me where it hurts? There is no pain, you are receding. A distant ship smoke.